Hi team, so this video is just going to go over what we talked about for the lesson plans for synchronous session 3 and 4. Julian, I know you're super familiar with like the content because we did Story of Self the last year, but when we met we talked about like some of the ways that we're going to sort of adapt it for the distance learning environment. So when they come into synchronous session 3, there's going to be, there's not a Nearpod for this because there isn't a need for like a collaborative board or anything like that. So it's just going to be regular slides. And you'll kind of see as I go through why, like there just wasn't a need to make this a Nearpod. So you can just use the regular slideshow presentation. The warm-up is just like as they come into class, ask them to think about what is a personal health for you. And I put like an example there or a definition, something that's not universally considered bad, but it's just really, really frustrating to you, i.e. being stuck on a sidewalk behind slow walkers. And then throw them into breakout rooms. Try to keep them small, maybe 2 or 3 people to just quickly, because it's only a 5-minute breakout room, to share their personal health. And then have people, or then bring everyone back. And then you as the teacher would kind of like answer this question. Do you think our personal health reveal anything about us or anything about you? And so you would give your example as a teacher. So for example, I'm going to give mine, like my personal hell is going to a social function with somebody else. Like, so I have to rely on that person for transportation. My personal hell is like having to rely on somebody else for transportation in a social function. And so if I think about it, like, why is that a personal hell for me? It's because then I can't leave when I want to. Well, why does that make me upset? Because I'm super introverted. So there's a point where I'm always like, I just have to go. So if I can't control that, that's a personal hell for me. So then you would invite them to think about, do you think any of your personal hells like share anything about you? See if anyone wants to share out. Depending on your class, some kids might not. And then the next little thing just popped up, where you would kind of say, well, in fact, like pretty much everything in our lives in some way reveals stories about, or reveals something about who we are. Our personal hells, our favorite things, our stories, our experiences reveal something about who we are. And so we want to invite that into the classroom. We're not getting into really content of the ISE yet, but we really want to begin to think about just who we are and building our community. So our goal is, and you would maybe have one of your students read out the goal or have them write some words that stand out to them in the chat, do any one of the different strategies for just reflecting on the objective of the day. I might call a kid to like read out the goal or have them, like I said, any one of the strategies, like write a word in the chat that stood out to you. But the goal being we will use the power of storytelling to, typo. It says to bring aspects of ourself, our identity into the classroom and connect with others. So you're going to tell them this is kind of what we're working on in the next couple of sessions. And then you're going to present the model. So here's the notes. So to think about our story of self and using the power of storytelling, we're going to use a really simple model called the Marshall Gantt story of self. You'll walk them through it using the slideshow. I give the definitions here: challenge, choice. You read each one of the definitions to them, and then outcome. Going through each of these guiding questions as you present it to them. And then tell them, so that's kind of our goal, is to use this model in order to bring ourselves into the classroom. But before we actually start writing our own story of selves, we're going to explore what that actually looks like. So tell them that there is going to be a link in Schoology to a Stories Choice board. I haven't made it yet, but I'll have it made some point tomorrow, where it has a couple of different stories. They have 15 minutes, so this is some time for them to do some independent learning, to just listen to as many stories as they can. Remember how I showed you guys in the meeting that they can read the stories, but they can also listen to them. So that's the really cool thing about the This I Believe website. I'm going to curate the links of like 6 or 7 stories, who knows how many. But make sure here when you tell them, okay, so in these 15 minutes, guys, be prepared when you're listening to listen for, in the story, do I hear the challenge? Like they're listening for the Marshall Gantt format. In the story, do I hear the choice that the narrator made? Do I hear the outcome? How did this story highlight this person's sense of self, their identity, their values? So really set them up for this by letting them know, like, okay, you can turn your cameras off, mics off. You're going to have 15 minutes to listen to and explore as many stories as you want in those 15 minutes. But as you're listening, be able to be thinking about, how could I present this story back using the Marshall Gantt format? Meaning, could I identify the challenge, the choice, and the outcome? And so after you bring them all back, it's okay, cool, hope you guys enjoyed checking out those stories. I'm now going to put you guys into breakout rooms for 10 minutes, and you're going to do exactly what I said you were going to do. You're going to tell your breakout room partners, okay, so I listened to a story about this girl. Here's basically like what her challenge was. Here was the choice she made. here was the outcome. And like from the story, what I feel like it came across was like she was telling me that this is what her value was, or this is what her identity, or like what I learned about her through this story was this. And then another person goes, oh, I listened to the story about a kid who this, and this. I identified this as the challenge, this is the choice. And so you give them those directions that they're basically retelling the stories that they listened to through the Marshall-Ganz format. So you bring them back from breakout rooms after they do that, and then let them know that the rest of class is actually time to work on their story of selves. So that they're going to actually be put in individual breakout rooms, which is that there's just going to be one of them in their room by themselves. And while they're in there, they're going to be accessing the template for the story of self. They're going to use the next 25 minutes to work on it. They're going to be, and let them know that by the next class, they have to submit a recording. Their recording has to be 5-minute max. And their story should answer the same exact format that we've just been learning about. Challenge, choice, outcome. Think about, does their story reveal something, a value for themselves, a part of their identity? Let them know that in this 25 minutes, you'll be popping in and out of the individual breakout rooms to just check in on them. They could also use the I need help function to ask us as teachers, hey, can you come in and help me think about this format? Help me like think about this structure that I'm creating. But that they're going to have 25 minutes in these individual breakout rooms to actually work on what their story is. Let them know that like this time is for them, with the ultimate goal being that there's going to be a recording submitted. So what can they do in this 25 minutes? Write out their story word for word, create bullet points, and then can even record in these 25 minutes if they want. But that their recording needs to be submitted by the next class in Schoology, and that there's a Schoology assignment where they submit their recording. Before you let them go into breakout rooms, like remind them like, this is about building community. This is about inviting who we are as individuals into the classroom and getting to know each other through this process. So we're not grading for a writing structure. That's actually why they're submitting a recording. And that submitting before the next class is just an expectation that allows them to participate in the next class. So like that's why we're asking them to submit the recording, because that way we know that they're ready to engage in the next class. Go back to this slide. So here are all your directions. I'll keep this slide up. This is what I'll share on my screen, so you can always like look at my screen if you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, but really all you're doing in the next 25 minutes is working on your story. So in that time, just be rotating through breakout rooms. You can obviously like take a break, but try to pop in and out of breakout rooms, and then just regulate the Zoom to see if any kid says like, hey, I need help. Bring them all back with about 5 minutes left. Bring them back, remind them that they have to be turning in a recording into Schoology by the next class. It's just really important to remind them, all right, guys, there's an assignment in Schoology that says Story of Self recording. Upload your recording there. And then to close, I thought it would be cool to have them pick 2 of these quotes. So have them read like which one of these quotes stands out to them the most, because these are both really cool quotes about the power of storytelling. Send them into mini breakout rooms for like 3 minutes to share which quote they picked and why. So give them like a minute to read each quote, think about which one stood out to them. Say, okay, guys, I'm going to send you back into some really mini breakout rooms of just 2 or 3 people. Tell the people in your breakout room which quote stood out to you and why, and then bring them back and say, okay, have a great afternoon, day, morning, whatever. Don't forget to turn in your recording before our next meeting.